thank you for joining with us today. If you've ever been in the position where you're just tired of arguing, you're just tired of the fight, then I think you're really going to enjoy today's devotional as we look at how we can overcome that. And we're going to take a look at the book of James to get this information. And James is going to talk about the problem, and he's going to give the antidote. And he's going to kind of give the antidote all throughout. So we're going to kind of take this bit by bit to kind of be able to place this all together. So we're going to look at the negative side of what causes the conflict and the fighting, and then we'll take a look at what he says about the antidote there. So James chapter 3, we're going to start in verse 13. It says, "Who is wise and understanding among you? By his good conduct, let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and be false to the truth. This is not the wisdom that comes down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace." So let's start off with the negative side. In verse 14, he talks about if we have this bitter jealousy inside ourselves, where we have these negative emotions because of what somebody else has. All right, so that's the jealousy side of I can't believe they have that. I don't want them to have that because I don't have it. That's jealousy. So when we're in that state of I don't want somebody to have something because I don't have it, or it's selfish ambition. It's something that's just about me, has nothing to do about others and the well-being of others, right? We have the two great commandments: love the Lord your God and love your neighbor better than yourself, or others better than yourself. And so when we twist that and we're looking at the world through our benefit, that's going to be a negative, all right? So I don't want other people to have what I don't have, or I'm just looking out for myself. When we have those things in our hearts, we're not to boast about that. We're not to be prideful and act as though we have wisdom, like that we have the right information that everybody needs to listen to, because we're actually starting off with the wrong foundation. We're trying to remove stuff from somebody else because we don't have it, or we're just trying to get our way. And James is saying, don't act like you have wisdom when you're starting from that standpoint, because you're going to be false to the truth, right? Truth is what emulates from God. God is truth, and the things he proclaims are truth, not things that we proclaim. So we have to be very careful of this as human beings. Remember, this part of James is written to the congregation that's listening. He's saying, do you have wisdom? Now think through these things. How are you advocating information? If it falls in these categories, now this is hard. We can't just assume that we're doing the right thing. We have to sit down and actually think through this. Am I envious of somebody else? Am I jealous at what they have and I'm really just trying to prevent them from having that? Or am I really just trying to do what I want, right? As Christians, we are to use I and me statements when we're taking responsibility for something. For responsibility for our feelings, for something we have done wrong. But we're not to use I and me statements when it comes to trying to advocate to get something, right? We want to be other-centered there. What is it that's best for other people, right? We're told in Philippians, we're told throughout the Bible, consider others better than yourself. So we should be using I and me statements when we're advocating a position in that. Otherwise, it's selfish ambition. And he warns, this wisdom does not come down from above. It doesn't come from God, right? It's the flesh inside us. We've talked a lot about this, but Paul tells us there's a battle between our flesh, our sinful nature, and the Spirit, the Holy Spirit that we have inside of us that's making our internal spirit to try to be doing the right things with God, right? Our spirit is willing, but our flesh is weak, and we have this tension going on inside us. We don't want to be talking from the flesh side, the sinful side. All right, but when we're doing jealousy or selfish ambition, we're going from the flesh side, our sinful side. And he warns that this is earthly, right? It's just of ourselves. It's unspiritual. It's not from God. And at worst, it can be demonic. It can actually be used for the enemy for destruction, right? This is what happens with church splits, right? Demonic ways. It's not that a Christian is possessed by Satan, but they can do his will by splitting churches over information that in the scheme of things isn't an unbiblical concept, or to hurt the witness of Christ, right? Hypocrisy is one of the biggest things that holds people back from becoming Christians. We're not to be hypocrites as Christians, though we all are sinful and fall short of what we do preach. So there's a tension there. There's a misunderstanding sometimes of hypocrisy, but there is true hypocrisy in the church, and that is detrimental to Christianity. It does more harm than what any intellectual argues against the existence of a God or the reality of God. It's Christians being hypocritical that is actually the harshest thing. So that's where the demonic comes in. They're not possessed by the demons, but they're doing the will of Satan. They just don't even realize it. So we don't ever want to be in these categories where we're doing earthly, unspiritual, or, God forbid, being on the side of the demonic. Because he warns in 16, where there is this jealousy and selfish ambition, disorder, and every vile practice is going to be there. Right? When we're not working in God's system and his ways, it's going to cause disorder. We're seeing that in Genesis chapter 1, right? God is a God of order. He's putting parameters on everything. So when we step outside of God's will, we're going to hit disorder into our lives. Now, in the next 17 on, he's going to go back into the antidote, so we're going to skip that for a second. But I want you to catch what he says in chapter 4. I think this is huge. It's the second part of verse 2 of chapter 4. You covet, which is kind of the same idea of this jealousy, all right? So you're desiring something that you do not have. You covet and you cannot obtain, right? So you desire something, but you can't get it. So you fight and quarrel. Most of the arguments you're going to have in a relationship is because you're going to covet, you're going to desire something, but you can't get it. And the reaction you're going to have is going to cause a fight and a disagreement with somebody. That is the underlying of so much of what we have in fighting and quarrels with individuals, whether they're our friends, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's at a work environment. Watch that, Christian. You covet, but you cannot obtain it. And that's going to cause you to do things that are ungodly. So let's watch ourselves so much in that area. God forewarns us. He says, I've created you. I know how you operate. I know how your brain works. I know how your emotion works. You're going to desire things. You're not going to be able to get it. And look out, it's going to cause a fight. Right? It's the same thing he kind of warned Cain of with the division between him and his brother Abel. God had to warn Cain. Cain, sin lies at the door, but you must rule over it. He's telling you now, and he's telling me now. God is telling us, saying, you are going to desire something and you're not going to be able to obtain it. Watch out. Sin lies at the door. It is going to cause a fight if you don't rule over your passions, your selfish ambitions. So, there's the problem. What's the antidote? Well, let's go back up to verse 13. He says, who is wise and understanding among you? He's kind of reaching out to the congregation going, okay, process through this information. He's saying, evaluate yourselves. Discern who truly is the wise ones among you. who knows what's right and how to practice what is right. That's what he's getting at with wisdom and understanding. In other words, you know the truth, now can you apply it into your life? That's the understanding part, right? And that. So, do we know this? Do we know what's right, and do we know how to apply it? He's asking us to ponder through this information. And he says, by his good conduct, let him show his work. Do you want to know if you have wisdom and understanding? Then look at your actions. Your actions will show, do you really know the truth, and do you know how to apply the truth? Right? That's the hardest thing we have as Christians. That's what Paul's gone about in Romans chapter 7. The good I want to do, I don't end up doing it. All right? So we got to watch our actions, seeing what's happening, see what we got to refine, right? Those trials in our lives, right? They bring up that dross, and we got to remove the things that are outside of God's will from our lives. So the next time we do better. It's part of that sanctification process. Not to become saved, because we're already saved if we believe in the work of Jesus Christ. But we do these things in order to be more like Christ because we are saved. Because God is ruling and reigning. We're a part of his kingdom. And so we're being the best that we can be for him. So, we are by good conduct. Let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom. Here's the key term here, the meekness of wisdom. What does that mean? We're not much different as Western Americans as the Romans were. Meekness is looked at as weakness, right? The person, or we're told in our culture, the same in the Roman, you need to stick up for yourself. You need to let your voice be heard at the table. Right? You need to stand up, to the bully. And there's a time and a place for some of those things. But Christ came, and he came meek. And over again, God tells us in the Bible to be meek individuals. Moses is lifted up as outside of Jesus. He was the meekest man that lived on this earth. So what is meekness? If meekness isn't weakness, then what really is it? Meekness is power under control. The Greeks used this in reference to their horses and training their horse. When we think of a horse, they have great power, right? You look at their body mass, you look at the muscles. A well-trained horse, you're going to see its muscles as it walks through. Its muscles are so big, it's pushing its veins to the outside of its skin. They are a powerful creature. That's why we see so much in culture, especially the Western culture, of horses being used in a variety of methods, right? They're used for transportation, they're used as pack animals, they're used for races, they're used for power in the fields one time. They have a lot of power. But the Greeks used this word that's being translated as meekness in our English Bibles to say basically a war horse is meek. The war horse went out and the rider had such control over them that the horse knew its number one goal was to protect its rider. So much power in the horse, but it was controlled power to do what needs to be done. We see that with the old-time farmers who use the horses in the fields. We see that with the Amish with using the horses with transportation. A lot of power there, but it was control, or is controlled power. And that is what meekness is. And so when he says, by the meekness of wisdom, he's saying you have great power given to you by God, but you know how to control it through even how you give wisdom, how you give information to people. Let me give you an example of this. In Proverbs chapter 26, verses 4 and 5, will illustrate this power under control when it comes to wisdom. It says, "Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes." Now this can be confusing at first reading, going, wait a minute, do we answer him or do we not answer him? Because he says both ways right there. Are these contradictory statements? Oh no. So let's take the second one first. Answer the fool according to his folly. At least he be wise in his own eyes. In your meekness and your power under control, you do answer the person who is in disagreement to the existence of God. Because if you don't give them an answer, they're going to walk away thinking that they're right. And so the proverb says you have to answer that fool, otherwise he's going to think he's right. But the verse before it says, do not answer the fool according to his folly. The fool is going to use bad wisdom. He's going to use things that are jealous, right? I don't want you to have something that I don't have. He's going to talk out of selfish ambition, right? That's just about what he desires or she desires. They're going to use arbitrary statements that are just mere opinions. They're going to talk about things that they've never put time into to research. They're going to talk about things that are just meant to breed quarrels, just for argument's sake, not to bring resolution, but just to have a fight. All these things that God warns us of we don't get engaged in these kind of attitudes. They're going to use language that is belittling, to tear you down as an individual. Harsh language. And what Proverbs is saying, don't answer them according to their folly. Don't do those unbiblical, those earthly, those demonic, those unspiritual methods of communication. Just because they're talking like that doesn't mean you're supposed to. You have meekness. You have power under control when it comes to wisdom. You can give the truth and still do it in gentleness. You can still do it in a researched manner. You can do it in a way that's not just how you feel, but is actually about God's truth. It's something that is others focused and not just about you. The things that they say are going to ramp you up emotionally, but you're not going to run off of that emotion because you are meek. You have power under control, right? Just like that horse. You're not going to go crazy on God because somebody did something different, right? If you're riding a horse down a trail and a deer jumps out in front of you, there's a couple of responses, right? That horse that you're riding can do. It can freak out and go berserk, or it can stay in control and say, I'm going to keep following what my master on my back is telling me to do. That's us. We're kind of like the horse, right? God is using us on this earth, and people are going to come out and they're going to lash out at us. They're going to do things that are contrary to what we are told to do as Christians, and it's up to us. How are we going to respond? Are we going to go berserk on God and go crazy and start acting like they are, right? The deer's being crazy. It's not power under control. It's just running through the woods. And so are we going to act like it? Be foolish like the deer, and we're going to go take off running weird too because we just got all riled up with the situations around us? Or are we going to be meekness and be power under control, and no matter what that deer's doing, we're not going to respond that way. We're going to stay in line with what our master, God, Jesus Christ, is telling us to do. He's at the reins of our lives and say, I'm going to stay on the course he has led for me. I'm going to be meek. I'm going to have power under control. And with my words, I'm still going to be gentle, even though they're harsh towards me. I'm still going to be looking out for the benefit of others, even though they are just trying to look at things in a selfish manner. I'm not going to bring myself to that level either. One of the commentators says when it comes to meekness, it's a contrast between the qualities of mildness associated with God's wisdom and the harshness of worldly wisdom based on pride. So if we want to have meekness of wisdom, it means we're in contrast to worldly wisdom that's based on pride about ourselves and what we have what we think and what we want and what we desire. But meekness and wisdom is looking at God's wisdom and how he asks us to respond. So what does this a little bit look like? We see that then down in verse 17. But the wisdom from above is first pure. So if we want to have meekness of wisdom, here's qualities that needs to be into our language. Again, if we are in a confrontation, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's at work, whether it's with a friend, our words need to have all these components that we're going to look at now in order to fall in the category of meekness of wisdom, right? So again, we're using that illustration. Whatever environment we're in, somebody just jumped out in front of us like that deer, right? And we're in this illustration, we're the horse. So in order for us not to go berserk, but to keep our cool, here's how our wisdom needs to come out to show that we are power under control. Our words first need to be pure, meaning there's no falsehood in them. Everything we say should line up directly with God's word in the Bible, in context, in its entirety, not taking passages out of context. But we should be able to back up what we say with multiple scriptures, multiple concepts of what we read. It needs to be pure, no falsehoods into it. Then, peaceable. Peaceable, not meaning that everybody's going to hug us and kiss us and say, oh, that was wonderful information that you gave me. I feel so much better about myself now. No, it's not going to make the world give up all of its ammunition and say, we're not going to have wars anymore because of the words that you spoke. Not that kind of peace. Peace in the war that people have in relationship with God. That we're at enmity with God without Jesus Christ. So our words should be things that are bringing them to a position where they can have a relationship with their Creator. They can have a relationship with Jesus Christ. That they can have the Holy Spirit brought into their life because they are recognizing who God is and how powerful He is and how they should desire a relationship with Him. That's going to bring peace. Peace in a relationship that they have with God. A peace that's going to last for eternity, not something that's just here on this earth. So our words should be filled with peace. Does it count? Can they take it with them? Or is it just information that is earthly here on this earth? It needs to be gentle, right? Shouldn't be tearing somebody down, making them feel bad about who they are. Right? The thing that is so hard in our flesh is we want to be blunt. We just want to tell it like it is. And there is a time and place for that, but sorry, Christian, it is not as often as we like to use it. All right? So basically, don't be blunt. All right? Be gentle. It's very rare that you have the ability to be blunt. If you're going to use blunt language, then I hope you've done a lot of research through the Bible to know when that's appropriate, because it's very far and few in between. Our words need to be gentle, soft towards people. They shouldn't walk away feeling like they've been attacked. They shouldn't walk away feeling like we hate them. If they did, then there's a possibility that we weren't very gentle with our words. Open to reason. I think personally this is one of the areas that humanity, or at least in the Western culture, struggles the most. Open to reason means willing to listen. Are we hearing them out? Even if they're wrong. Even if wrong, God still hears out. Look at it throughout the Bible, how much God would listen to people who had false claims that they were making. He would rebuttal them, but He would listen first. We're to be slow to speak and quick to hear. If we're being empowered by God, if we have power under control when it comes to wisdom, then we're going to hear out. Not always because we need to change our minds, but because we need to hear where they're coming from. If we don't know where they're coming from, how are we ever going to reach them where they're at? So power under control is listening, willing or open to reason, full of mercy, showing kindness to those who are in misery, recognizing that, again, even though somebody might have a wrong stance or be doing the wrong thing, sometimes there's an underlying thing of misery there. They are separated sometimes from their Creator. Or if they are a believer and we're in a fight with them, something is going on in their life that has them riled up maybe. And we want to be kind to them in their misery, to give them grace and mercy. Going, you shouldn't be maybe acting like the way that you are, but something's going on in your life that's got you riled up, and I want to be there for you during that instead of ridiculing you during that time. And good fruits. Right? There should be a purpose for what we're doing. In Paul's writings to Timothy, he talks to Timothy about going, you shouldn't ever do things that just breed quarrels, right? That are just for argument's sake, that there's no purpose to have any kind of resolution made. You just want to fight. There should be good fruit from what we're doing. Right? We've used this over and over again from Peter Barton Starks. Opening our mouths should get us one step closer to our goal. If the things that are coming out of our mouth isn't getting us one step closer to our goal, then they shouldn't be coming out of our mouth, because then they're probably hindering us getting to our goal. So there should be good fruits that are happening. What are the results that I'm looking for? Am I using the correct words and body language to get to that goal? Otherwise, or am I producing something bad, right? In a garden, you don't want to grow nasty fruit. And we don't want to do it in our lives either. So what we plant is what's going to be harvested. We don't want to be impartial. This can go both ways. Again, we have to be a little bit careful of this. There can be the impartiality of somebody in a high position, and so we do things to appease them. No, we're not to be impartial. Our wisdom shouldn't look that way. But we can go the extreme the other way and take somebody who's impoverished in a lower position, and we do what they want to do because we want to fight for the underdog. That's wrong too. We're not to be impartial. Everybody's supposed to be treated as equal. So we need to be careful with that, with our wisdom. Are we treating everybody equal? Are we doing what God is asking us to do? Or are we raising up a certain type of person or something like that with what we're doing? And lastly, to be sincere. This is the word that's usually translated as not to be hypocritical. Right? To be who we really are. A hypocrite, it comes from the Greek idea of the plays, where they would put a mask in front of their face to represent them as something that they're not. So we're not to be that as Christians. We're not to put on a front to act like we're somebody who we aren't. So we need to be sincere. Our wisdom. We need to be honest with our shortcomings. We need to be honest with who we are. We need to be honest with the truth too. We don't want to downplay the truth just to try to make somebody feel better because we're a people pleaser. We have to stick to the truth. So we're sincere. This is how it is, and we can't really negotiate away from God's truth. And so we should have all those things. If we can apply those into our lives, then we're going to have control over the power in our lives when it comes to our wisdom. If not, we're going to fall into these other areas, and it's going to cause tension into our lives. We're going to covet. We're not going to be able to obtain it. It's going to lead to fights and quarrels. This isn't an easy thing to do. This is hard. It takes practice, right? You don't just jump on a horse and their power under control. It takes a lot of time and energy to train that horse to have power under control. That's part of the sanctification process for us. We're not going to have meekness in our wisdom just right off the bat from watching this video and say, I'm going to go forward now and I'm going to be in total control all the time for God. No, He's going to bring in those trials into our lives that are going to bring up that dross, our shortcomings. It's going to be up to us to have to remove those shortcomings in order to become more controlled in the future. Right? When training a horse, the horse is going to do wrong things. And the trainer has to teach the horse that was the wrong thing to do, so it can remove that and do better the next time. That's going to be the same with our lives. It's going to take some time to get there, but we can get there. God's going to empower us to do it. He's given us that promise. There'll be times it'll be scary. There'll be times it'll be frustrating. But keep pressing. I have a couple of videos after this, little clips for you to see of Julie trying to teach me how to do some basic things with the horse, and you'll see where not everything goes as planned. And I hope you can see the connection with that on what that means sometimes with our training of having power under control when it comes to our wisdom. The things aren't always going to go the way that we want them to. So hopefully you can connect some applications there of what it's going to be like in your walk. Thank you for taking this time to be with us this week. I pray that you have a blessed rest of the week and that we can have our control over the power of our wisdom. So Julie's going to try to teach me how to take care of a horse. So let's see how this goes. Okay, so you start. Yep. Can you do this exercise? Oh.
He doesn't usually do this.
Okay.
Let's try the other side and see how that goes.
Okay. We're gonna go to the other side. Okay, so Julie was telling me really his hooves don't need to be clean, but we're going to try it anyways on this side. This is his better side.
And there we go.
Oh.
And then we just hold it like this.
Well, that makes it look pretty simple.
Let's see how
Alright.
this goes.
We're gonna work together here, okay? Alright. Grab for that little thingy-majabby. Lift up on the leg, which he does not help out on at all. Alright, work with me, buddy. Work with me. Oh my goodness, bend your leg. Oh, there we go. Ah! Got it.
See, that one actually needs to be cleaned.
Alright, I got the tool in my pocket. I came prepared.
I'm so sorry, Cap.
Got this, buddy. Alright, so then, technically, like, no meat in here, right?
Right.
No, keep it up. Oh!
You lost it.
Oh, that was just mean. We only got like a quarter of the way done, dude. Okay, so now Julie's gonna try to show me how to do groundwork.
Alright, so first we're gonna lunge him.
Alright, so first we're gonna lunge him.
So when you're not doing anything, you keep the whip pointed down.
Whip down.
So first, you have it in your hand, and you're gonna point the direction you want him to go,
Okay.
and then you click.
Click.
Okay, and when you're doing that, you raise your whip.
Okay, click, raise, wait, no, point, click, raise.
Point,
Okay.
click, raise. Yep. And if he's not doing it, you like gently hit him on the butt. And
Okay,
if he still doesn't do it, you hit him a little harder.
okay,
Alright, and then the second he takes a step forward, you release.
okay.
I'm gonna put my whip up and I'm gonna click again. And then to stop, I'm gonna pull back a little bit and step in front of him. So to do that, you kind of tap him in the, yeah.
See how simple it is?
Back.
Back. Hey, good boy, we succeeded in something. Good job. Okay, point. Yep. Up. Just keep